According to a recent Reuters Ipsos poll, more than half of American voters believe the system U.S. political parties use to pick their candidates for the White House is rigged. And more than 2/3 of the American public want to see this process changed. And they're not wrong in feeling this way. A joint study from Harvard University and the University of Sydney found that the United States ranked dead last in electoral integrity among all established Western democracies. In the critical New York primary, more than 100,000 people were purged from Brooklyn voter rolls. Now, was this just incompetence or deliberate? Here to discuss voter suppression is Greg Palast, journalist, New York Times best-selling author. His books include Billionaires and Ballot Bandits, How to Steal an Election in 9 Easy Steps, and The Best Democracy Money Can Buy. What's going on with American electoral process? What's happening?
There's not much of an electoral process. We get the candidates selected for us. Here's our problem. In America, we don't count all the votes. Okay, I've been covering this beat of screwed up elections in America for the BBC, for The Guardian, for almost 2 decades. And the story gets worse every year, now for Rolling Stone. Okay, here's what's happening. Back in 2000, George Bush supposedly won the presidency of the United States by 537 votes in Florida.
Okay.
But what I discovered for The Guardian and BBC was that 56,000 black men were removed from the voter rolls. They're removed because they were called felons, criminals who aren't allowed to vote. In fact, everyone was innocent. Their only crime was voting while black. That's 56,000 black guys thrown off the voter rolls, Matthew, and that means that when George Bush was elected, he was elected by basically a lynching by laptop. That was 2000. And if you think it got better in 2004, no, it didn't. We had in Ohio over 150,000 votes just went poof.
Now, is this proven? I mean,
yeah, I
haven't heard any mainstream media reporting on an election being stolen.
Wait a minute. Mainstream, not American mainstream.
Okay.
Mainstream, the biggest news agency in the English language is BBC, and I put this at the top of the BBC Nightly News. I put it on the top of the most prestigious English language paper in America, The Guardian. But it was on page 0 in America how the vote was stolen in 2000. But then the U.S. Civil Rights Commission investigated. They found out I was absolutely correct. 2004, we're back in the game, especially in Ohio. This stuff happens again. My co-investigator, Bobby Kennedy, who's a dean of the law school at Pace University, we discovered that the whole election in Ohio was ugly, fixed, and votes thrown into the garbage. This is a common American occurrence. Almost 5.9 million votes nationwide. In 8 and 12, the games continue. I know you're going to say, oh, yeah, Obama got elected. But he got elected because he overwhelmed the steal. Now in 16, I'm uncovering, for Rolling Stone, I'm uncovering some of the ugliest vote flushing techniques I've ever seen. And yes, both parties do it, but there is definitely a bias against minority voters in both parties. The result is that the GOP tends to benefit from most of the vote snatching.
So what happened in this recent New York primary? What happened in Brooklyn? What happened in the rest of New York?
What happened in Brooklyn? I can tell you what happened in Brooklyn. In Brooklyn, that's Kings County, okay? That the Kings County Democratic Party controls the voting machinery of Brooklyn. They conducted what voting attorneys from the New York Public Interest Research Group call an absolutely illegal purge of the voter rolls. 126,000 voters were simply knocked off the voter rolls before the elections on the flimsiest of excuses. That's against the law before just before an election in New York. And that was one way to suppress the vote. In fact,
so what's happening as a result of that?
Well, for example, Bernie Sanders supposedly lost by about 16 percentage points. That's a crush. But if you count back in the people who were forced to vote on what are called affidavit ballots, these are kind of what I call placebo ballots. In other states, they call them provisional ballots. The placebo ballot, they make it, your name's on the voter roll. Sorry, Matthew, you're not here. Oh, but that's not right. Don't worry. Fill out this affidavit ballot. Fill out this provisional ballot. Now, that's usually, by the way, given to black people, 9 out of 10 are given to voters of color. You fill out that ballot. They check to see if your name's on the voter roll. You know it's not there. They throw it out. So the fact that you filled out this affidavit ballot is complete nonsense. Right. So what happened is the Kings County machine let the purge go ahead, said nothing, staged them. People lost that. By the way, it's equal, the purge in just Kings County is equal to 50% of the vote cast in that primary in the biggest voting county in New York. Now,
would that have changed the result of the election, potentially?
It would have brought it, from what I see, it would have brought it close. Instead of 16%, it would have been that close, 4%. But let me tell you something. New York is not anywhere close to the worst of our states in terms of messing around with the vote count.
Yeah. What's the worst?
What's the worst? Some of the worst, okay. Ohio, okay. Yeah. Now, look. America gets to vote, but Ohio picks the president. Ohio decides, all right? And Ohio, North Carolina, Florida. I was just in those states. Mm-hmm. Now, in North Carolina and Ohio, they've started a new system. It's called Interstate crosscheck. Now, what's that? It's a system by which they see if a guy named Joe Black has voted in one state and on the same election day voted in another state, voting twice. Now, voting twice is a crime. You go to jail for 5 years, so no one does it. So, and what they're doing is they're silently removing people with common names from the voter rolls. I kid you not. You know how many people are on this list? 7.2 million people have been targeted. Now, they're not going to remove all of them, but we know that they're going to remove nearly 1 million before November. This is not covered in the U.S. press.
Why not?
This is not covered.
This is huge.
Yeah, it is
huge.
This is
absolute travesty.
Look.
I mean, for the country that calls itself often the greatest democracy on earth, that wants to spread the kind of democracy that we do so well across the globe, what kind of example are we actually setting? And why aren't we talking about this in the mainstream media? I don't understand.
Look, when black men were called felons in Florida in 2000, two things happened. One, the Democratic Party didn't defend them, okay?
Why not?
Because if Al Gore had said something, he's a demi-billionaire now. He's doing okay, got the Nobel Peace Prize. He's doing all right. He grew a nice beard for a while. None of that would have happened if he would have said, by the way, American democracy is the empire with no clothes, okay? So that story had to run in The Guardian. That story had to run at the top of the news all over the world, but the United States.
I don't know. Again, that answer isn't good enough to me.
Yeah, well,
that answer isn't good enough to me. So you're saying that Al Gore wanted to grow a beard, and that's why he didn't call foul on American democracy?
Because he knew that it wouldn't change the system, and that all he would do is throw himself on the fire.
Because people would think that this was so outrageous to make that kind of accusation about American democracy, that you're too much of a radical?
What corporations would put him on their board? Would he be the media mogul he is now? Like, finally, by the way, Hillary Clinton, I will give her this, did say at the beginning of this year, the first time I heard a Democratic politician say it, the vote was stolen in 2000 in Florida. It took 16 years to get that said by a major Democrat, okay? I mean, Bernie Sanders said it, but he's not a Democrat,
right.
Okay? But, so we don't have the cover here. When I first broke the story of this whole cross-check thing with these millions of people getting flushed, being targeted as supposedly voting twice, Maria Hernandez. And by the way, Cristina Hernandez is supposed to be the same voter as Maria Carlota Hernandez. Really? So that's how they're removing people.
This is the stupidest, most ridiculous system for doing anything. I mean, so is it deliberate?
Is it deliberate? Absolutely. It's a family show,
okay,
so I'll leave out the middle name. But
it's deliberate.
It is very deliberate.
Who's doing this?
Okay.
And are the candidates, are current presidential candidates involved? I mean, are they behind this?
No. Candidates don't need to get their fingers dirty in these little things. They have deniability. It's the minions. It's usually done by secretaries of state and the voting officials in these states. In the case of this purging of people from the voter rolls, who supposedly have common names, because they have common names, supposedly voted twice. By the way, if you vote twice, you should go to jail. You shouldn't lose your vote. By the way, you rob a bank, they don't close your bank account, they put you in jail. If you vote twice, they should arrest you, but they don't because it's fake.
How many people out of these millions that have been on this cross-check system have been prosecuted for the crime of double voting?
How many have been prosecuted?
Yeah.
3 out of 7 million.
So 3 people went to 2 different states to vote twice?
Yeah, by 3 people. And looks like one is a 90-year-old guy who didn't realize he'd already voted by absentee ballot. One was a guy who'd moved his vacation. I mean, it's ridiculous. Yes, you shouldn't vote twice. But what they're doing is an excuse to remove people with common names. And common names means black people like Jackson, Washington, Jones. This is a legacy of slavery, is common names among black folk. Rodriguez, there's only, I went to the Korean community in Atlanta, where I found a lot of people who were on this list and losing their votes. Mr. Sung Park. Apparently Sung Park is like, John Smith here, John Jones. And there's only like 4 last names in the Korean community, Kim Lee, Park Ho. That's how it breaks down. And they said, this is an attack on the Asian American community. Now you'd say, why are they going after Asian Americans? Real simple. Why are 29 Republican voting officials in 29 states going after the Asian American vote? Answer, in the last election, Asian Americans voted 3 out of 4, 74% Democratic. Hispanics voted 73% Democratic. Again, common names, black folk voted 87% Democratic. So the reason, it's not like that, this is not rednecks who don't like black folk or yellow folk. This is people who don't like the color of their vote, which is blue. Now, do the Democrats do it too? You just saw it in Brooklyn, okay? But usually, and here's the terrible irony, which is that when the Democrats go after voters, again, tend to go after minority voters. Why? Because you tend to have fights in the Democratic Party in primaries, and so the vote suppression by Democrats is in primaries, so they go after other Democrats. Republicans tend to go after poor Democrats.
What can we do?
What can
people watching the show do?
1, unstupid yourself. Learn about it and inform yourself. 2nd, protect yourself. In fact, at my site, I have something called 7 Ways to Beat the Ballot Bandits. So you know what? 126,000 people lost their vote in New York. If they had simply checked their vote about 3 months before the election, they'd have known, you're gone, baby. So re-register. You think you're registered? I voted in the same place for 20 years.
Be diligent.
Too bad, Mr. Jones. Do that. Okay. Vote early if you can.
Yeah.
Okay? So that if your name's missing or there's a problem, they don't like your signature, this is a new one. They say, oh, we don't like your signature. Okay, you have a chance to complain and scream and holler. Then don't take one of these placebo ballots. Don't take one of these provisional affidavit ballots. Say, I want a ballot, and I want an election judge to adjudicate now in this polling place that I have the right to a real ballot.
So we have to fight for our democracy every step of the way, because currently we've lost it.
Yeah.
Greg, thanks for your time today. For more on Greg's writings, check out his site, gregpalast.com.